call now on the Honorable Minister of Commerce to say prayers.
Let us pray. Almighty God, from whom all wisdom and power are derived, we beseech thee so to direct and prosper the deliberations of the Legislative Assembly, now assembled, that all things may be ordered upon the best and surest foundations for the glory of thy name and for thy safety, honor, and welfare of the people of these islands. Bless our Sovereign Lady, Queen Elizabeth II, Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, Charles, Prince of Wales, and all the royal family. Give grace to all who exercise authority in our Commonwealth, that peace and happiness, truth and justice, religion and piety may be established amongst us. Especially we pray for the Governor of our islands, the Premier, the Speaker of the Legislative Assembly, the Leader of the Opposition, Ministers of the Cabinet, ex officio members, members of the Legislative Assembly, the Chief Justice, and members of the judiciary, that we may be enabled faithfully to perform the responsible duties of our high office. All this we ask for thy great name's sake. Let us say the Lord's Prayer together. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. The Lord bless us and keep us. The Lord make his face shine upon us, and be gracious unto us. The Lord lift up the light of his countenance upon us, and give us peace, now and always. Amen.
Please be seated. Proceedings of this Honorable House are now resumed.
Administration of oaths or affirmations.
None.
Reading by the Honourable Speaker, messages and announcements.
Honorable members, several messages this morning. Firstly, to apologize for our colleague, the Minister of Finance, who is not able to be here in the chambers, but is certainly attending the meeting by Zoom. Honorable members, today marks a historic sitting following the auspicious and momentous inauguration when the Parliament, when the legislature last Friday had become an autonomous House of Parliament. This is our first working day. As members of Parliament, MPs, we are put here by the people of the Cayman Islands, and to that end, we need to serve the people with our respect and to ensure their continued survival. Will always do what we've done, and that's to act with fairness, and despite our spirited debates, at the end of the day, our intention is to make laws to govern the peoples of the islands and laws of acts that will serve in the interest of our jurisdiction and for the betterment of our people. Most importantly, it is worthy to note the legislature is no longer a department, but now rather an institution being a parliament. Apart from being autonomous and perform our unique legislative functions, there will continued equal respect must be shown to the other co-equal branches, being the executive and the judicial arms of government. The executive clearly makes policy, provides strategic directions for us. In terms of the judiciary, being the interpreter of our laws, it is noteworthy that during these last number of years as a developing country, and as the country prospered, so did our problems grow and become more complex and diverse. I recall, members, when I came here in '84, there was a Chief Justice and a magistrate, and I think we did have a puisne judge, a juvenile court. And our judicial system, today, we do have a family court, financial services court, drug rehabilitation court, and a probate court to deal with those complex issues. And so we thank our God that we are able to move with the times and have moved with the times over the years. Those courts do address social issues as well. On the occasion of our last meeting of the historic closure of the 1959-2020 Legislative Assembly, members all had a chance to speak. On that occasion, one member chose to chastise other members in regards to their conduct, in regards to the House meetings and what he claimed as disrespect to our national institution. In that also manner, he chose to take a swipe at the Speaker and my rulings. The meetings of this Honorable House is only one part, a piece of work of some members. One cannot compare the work of the House today and the needs of the country of 1960 or 1984 to that of this country, the Cabinet, and this House today. Government today and recent years has dealt from the Gulf War in the East, hoof and mouth diseases, terrorist attacks, Ivan, earthquakes, hurricanes, and still in the throes of the COVID-19 virus. Faces the most challenging times that I've ever seen. From what I can remember, ministers and others are meeting before they get to the office in the morning, meeting in the office before they come down here, meetings while the House is meeting, meeting when they finish the meeting. We have a small amount of members in connection to other countries with billion-dollar economies. Sometimes our problems are as huge as any metropolitan states. We all see that if you complain because the House starts late, you want to leave at 4:30 to go home. That's a thing of the past. And who are we meeting with? We're meeting with people, constituents who need to meet, who really need to see the minister, or they lay wait him by the gate. They don't get him by the gate, they walk into the assembly here. So You may chastise members for what the member says is disrespecting our national institutions. I think it is inconsiderate of what a government has to go through today's world. Ministers, in particular, meet with staff members. They meet with civil servants whose duties demand the minister's time. Decisions that must be made that day, sometimes in the immediate. So with all the work being done, we're going to complain because we can't get to leave at 4:30? When I came here in 1984, the audit office wasn't effective. It became so after 1992, but too late then to stop some of the pure mismanagement of government funds. At that time, civil servants came and they gave their evidence, as did other members if they were called. Today, government work, from what I am seeing, is affected because staff will say, we don't know how to move, as when we think we are doing right, we are told in PAC that we are wrong, and sometimes threatened with sense emotions. No doubt the PAC is an important body charged with making sure government money is spent right, but it cannot deal with government policy. It's part of the institution of Parliament. It's a creature of the House, responsible to the House. The House has ability to check any member in their rush. And then they PAC report to the House for a reason. But I must say, worse is to run off to a radio show telling one side of the matter to a host or persons who don't know otherwise, yet they agree. They don't know what they're talking about, but they agree. And even when the matter has not been laid, whether you agree or not with the presiding officer's points he raised, you get on the radio where the speaker really can't do justice to answer a complaint and shouldn't have to, because members know that it's against the rules for a member to do that. In the last meeting of the House, I delayed the PAC report dealing with offering. I made no ruling. I did make a statement. I was since taken to task on the radio shows by the member from North Side, the current chair of the PAC. I am compelled to respond to the misguided assertion advanced by the member from North Side with regards to the discretion to delay the annual reports for the year 2019-2020 of the Public Accounts Committee in my capacity as Speaker of the former Legislative Assembly. For the avoidance of doubt whatsoever, any doubt whatsoever, I respectfully disagree with the member on the contents of his opinion, upon which the member hopelessly seeks or sought to rely. In blunt terms, as Speaker, I do have the discretion to delay the report based on the reasons that I gave, as much as I could, and I will give here now. It is important to note the background of the report for the benefit of the people of these islands who may have unwittingly formed a belief based on inadequate information that restricts their ability to achieve a balanced perspective. It is rather curious, though, that the member seeks to challenge my ability to delay an already belated report. The Hansard's excerpt will reflect that the member sought leave to lay the report, as is custom, in respect of which he offered an apology for the notable delay. Separate and apart from the fact that the request for leave implies the Speaker's inherent authority, the member failed to cite the basis of jurisdiction for his own delay. In response to the member's request for leave, I explained that there were matters connected to the report that warranted closer scrutiny based on an initial cursory glance at its contents. I further explained that the report was only disclosed to me the previous morning and would require verification of its contents. When challenged by the member, I reinforced my reasons and underscored the need for a cautious approach, especially because I did not have opportunity to absorb the report nor the peripheral information it contained. This was not a two-page report. The verbatim minutes are over 50 pages. The other factor is that I had a complaint from a witness whose evidence was not carried in the minutes, not recorded in the minutes, yet his character was being smeared by the accusation that he was lying to the committee. Much to the credit of the member from Northside and his recent campaign on both radio shows, it is now common knowledge that the report contains sensitive information that pertains to unsubstantiated allegations against an integral member of the Utility Regulation and Competition Office, OFREG, who has made complaints to me as presiding officer. As I said, it was this revelation upon my review, fleeting review as it was, of the report, and the potentially irrefutable damage to the otherwise exemplary character of the reference OFREG member that formed the basis of my decision to delay the report. I must say here that I intend to allow the report, but with my statement attached to it at the same time. It is a long-standing and universally accepted practice that we in the Commonwealth, that we defer to United Kingdom, UK Parliament, and other Commonwealth jurisdictions for guidance where our standing orders are silent, and even to buttress any ruling made by any presiding officer of this Honorable House. Despite what the Attorney General Chambers has said, there is no order, whether in the Cayman Islands nor the UK, that prevents the presiding officer from delaying the report. The Speaker's discretion is inherent. More modernized parliaments, such as New Zealand in 1996, made procedural changes intended to prevent abuse in the form of allegations that may impair a person's reputation. An extract from the text Parliamentary Practice in New Zealand, 3rd edition, authorized by David McGee, states as follows, and I should say before I read it, that these are rulings, practices, and conventions that Commonwealth presiding officers rely on today. We just don't rely on the UK, sometimes which are very archaic. Anyway, the Parliamentary Practice in New Zealand says, and I quote, "A major procedural change made in 1996 was the adoption of procedures designed to bring to the attention of the persons any allegations that are made against them that may seriously damage their reputation, and to give them a right to respond to such allegations. Committees should be alerted to preventing irrelevant and unnecessary personal allegations being made in the first place. Select committees' hearings are not occasions for any personal vendetta. Even if an allegation is made, committees have power to expunge irrelevant allegations from the committee's transcript and to return written evidence. They are also obliged to consider seeking an order of the House permanently suppressing the evidence if that was needed. But such allegations may not be enough to remove the stain of an allegation that has entered the public domain. The right to be informed and the right to reply arise where an allegation is made against a person that may seriously damage the reputation of that person. Whether an allegation may cause serious damage to reputation is a matter for the committee to assess in deciding whether it must activate the information or reply provisions of the standing orders. Where allegations are directed at someone, the committee will wish to hear a reply to those allegations, in any case, so that it can make informed conclusions on them. This is especially so when allegations are made against a public body, which is by definition under a public duty to account to the House. However, mere criticism, especially of a public body, is not seen as amounting to a serious damage to reputation and thus requiring the application of the reply provisions. In the political environment of parliamentary proceedings, a higher threshold for criticism applies that might operate generally. Committees are therefore obliged to identify allegations in written evidence that may seriously damage the reputation of others, and if necessary, to take preemptive action by returning or expunging the evidence or hearing the evidence in private. Where it does receive such evidence, a committee must draw any allegations to the attention of those persons against whom they are made. That's the bottom line. You wouldn't expect to go to court and not have a chance to give your side of the story. That is simple common law. But at the root of this, and at the root of what we do, must be the adherence to law as it is, the rule of law. A person is innocent must be given a chance to reply to his accusations or to the accusations made against him. A person who is about to appear before a committee must be informed of or given a copy of any evidence or material in the committee's possession other than secret evidence that contains an allegation that may seriously damage that person's reputation. It is then expected that that person, in giving evidence, will respond to the allegation. At the very least, that person will thereby have an opportunity to do so. Anyone whose reputation may be seriously damaged by a committee's proceedings can request from the clerk of the committee a copy of all material evidence other than secret evidence, records, or other information which the committee possesses concerning that person. Such a request is considered by the committee, and if it is considered it necessary to prevent serious damage to that person's reputation, the material is provided to the person concerned. It may, however, be provided in a different form so that requests so as to avoid undue difficult expense or delay. Where a serious allegation is received or made in public or private, the committee is obliged to consider whether to expunge it from any transcript of the hearings and whether to inform the person against whom the allegation was made of the allegation. In the case of an allegation made at the public hearing, merely expunging the evidence from the transcript without informing the person concerned and giving him or her an opportunity to respond, it is not likely to be an adequate means of dealing with the matter. In the case of a serious allegation made or received in secret, the committee is also obliged to consider whether to return the evidence or seek to suppress it. If no such action is to be taken, it must then inform the person against which the allegation was made of it, if it considers that the damage to that person's reputation outweighs any detriment to the witness who gave the evidence. Where a serious allegation has been made against a person, that person must be given a reasonable opportunity to respond to the allegation by written submission and personal appearance before the committee. While the committee is obliged to give a person an opportunity to make a response, it and its members are not obliged to believe or accept the response that is made or to believe or accept the initial allegation for that matter. If the matter is considered material enough to the committee's work, the committee may make findings indicating that it does not accept the responder's explanation, though if these are to be included in its report as adverse findings, that person must be given an opportunity to comment on them at the draft report stage. End of quote. The member is well aware that the reference offering member is a former long-standing member of this Honorable House, a former ranking civil servant. I don't see the useful purpose to speculate on anything at this time. It is clear, though, that the contents of the report have the potential to inflict undue damage to the member's reputation. And that's the complaint. I was not afforded the opportunity, nor did I receive the prior notice from the member as to the allegations contained in the report. It is clear from the position adopted, though, in New Zealand, that best practices dictate transparency, especially in circumstances such as these, and it is incumbent upon the member to perform his duties in that way. The decision to lay the report belated and the subsequent attempts to undermine the presiding officer's authority to briefly delay it leaves much to be desired. I should say, when I was criticized on the radio, I thought, how come the member would seek to go on national radio to challenge the Speaker's authority on what he claims to be a breach of the standing orders? However, he failed to offer an explanation as to how he came to be in the position as chair of the PAC, a post he continues to occupy despite his expulsion from the official opposition many moons ago. The relevant passage from the well-known text Erskine May Parliamentary Practice, 24th edition, page 847, makes this position crystal clear and leaves absolute no room for ambiguity in this regard. It states, and I quote, "The Committee of the Public Accounts was first appointed in 1861. Standing Order number 148 now provides for its explanation of the resource accounts and of such other accounts laid before Parliament as the committee may think fit. The number of members of the committee is fixed by the same standing order at not more than 16. One of its members is by convention a treasury minister who receives agendas but does not attend meetings." But particular to what I'm saying is this: its chair must be a member of the official opposition. I have consulted the relevant provisions within the standing orders and the constitutions of the Cayman Islands, and I'm satisfied that I am authorized to lay the report for the reasons previously noted. Though the provisions may be silent on the issue as to discretion of the Speaker to delay the tabling of a report from the PAC, equally so, there are no provisions that prohibits the ability to do so, whether locally or in the United Kingdom. For reasons I have articulated here, I found it acceptable to rely upon common practice of another Commonwealth jurisdiction, namely New Zealand, held to be good law. If we are to adhere so strictly to standing orders, it should be notably mentioned what I have just said from Erskine Mays. It remains my humble view that a public hearing is not an appropriate forum for personal allegations, nor do I see it fit that an unsubstantiated report prepared by the PAC should be allowed to be, by the Speaker, tabled blindly and without verification as to its contents, specifically where the named subjects has not been provided with an opportunity to address the allegations with the report. I received the email from Mr. Pearson, and I read that aspect. I write to confirm my telephone conversation with you on Wednesday, 14th of October 2020, regarding the above subject. The following preface provides the context for my detailed comments below. My complaint to you as Speaker of the Honorable Legislative Assembly of Parliament was to apprise you of the incorrect manner in which the chairman, the member from Northside, chairman of the Public Accounts Committee, directed the PAC to strike my sworn testimony given on the 15th of July 2020 from the PAC records. He determined that my testimony was falsified based solely on a fact check presented to the PAC by the Auditor General. Neither did Mr. Miller allow me to read the Auditor General's allegations against me, nor his report concerning me, which he, as chairman, should know is not in compliance with proper parliamentary procedures. Further, I sent an email to Mr. Miller on Sunday, the 26th of July 2020, expressing my concerns regarding the action taken by the PAC to strike my sworn statement. But to date, I have not received the courtesy of a reply from him. I am most concerned that as a witness at the PAC meeting, that there would be reputational damage done nationally and internationally to my character. I stress that there has been no effort to discuss with me what was being included in the PAC report, which is intended to be tabled in the Legislative Assembly. I'm not going further, although he went on to explain about the matter. And I want to state why. I could not, as presiding officer, delay or stop the Auditor General's report, from being tabled, because that is sent here and it is distributed before anybody get a chance to defend themselves. Not something that I agree with, but that's the standing orders, and therefore I have no jurisdiction to stop it. But where, and I repeat, allegations are made against a witness, that witness must be given a chance to come to the committee and give his side of the story, to put it bluntly. The report shall be ordered to be laid, but with my ruling attached. I thank you for your indulgence on this matter. I do hope that it does not go back again into a radio show. It is unfair, I must repeat, for these matters to be taken on radio so that two radio show hosts who don't know what they're talking about can berate the presiding officer. Even go as far to talk about, as one did, about investigations because of the delay. This keeps up, I must tell you, from what I hear from civil servants, where one came down and faded away. Bear that in mind, honorable members, in this new era of Parliament. We are not here to kill people. We are not here in any committee to do that. We are not here in this House to do that. We are protected where the witness is not so protected, but the witness do have protection to the extent that the witness must be given a chance when he is accused of a matter to have his say and it be recorded.
Presentation of petitions.
None.
Presentation of papers and of reports. Civil Aviation Authority of the Cayman Islands Annual Report, fiscal year ending 31st of December 2018, to be laid on the table by the Honourable Minister of Employment, Border Control, Community Affairs, International Trade, Investment, Aviation, and Maritime Affairs.
The Honorable the Premier.
Civil Aviation Authority of the Cayman Islands Annual Report, fiscal year ended 31st of December 2019, to be laid on the table by the Honourable Minister of Employment, Border Control, Community Affairs, International Trade, Investment, Aviation, and Maritime Affairs.
Honorable the Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay on the table of this Honourable House the annual report for the Civil Aviation Authority of the Cayman Islands for the fiscal year ending the 31st of December 2018, as well as the annual report for the Civil Aviation Authority for the fiscal year ending 31st of December 2019.
Order. This is the Premier speaking.
No, thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yep. Cayman Maritime Annual Report, January 2019 to December 2019, Maritime Authority of the Cayman Islands, to be laid on the table by the Honourable Minister of Employment, Border Control, Community Affairs, International Trade, Investment, Aviation, and Maritime Affairs.
The Honorable the Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay on the table of this Honourable House the annual report of the Cayman Maritime Authority for the year January 2019 to December 2019.
So ordered. Is the Premier speaking?
No, thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Cayman Islands Monetary Authority Annual Report 2019 to be laid on the table by the Honourable Minister of Financial Services and Home Affairs.
The Honourable the Minister of Financial Services.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay on the table of this Honourable House the annual report and the 2019 audited financial statements of the Cayman Islands Monetary Authority for the 12-month financial period beginning 1st of January 2019 and ending 31st of December 2019.
So ordered. Is the Minister speaking?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the annual report tabled for the Cayman Islands Monetary Authority is comprised mainly of three key sections: an industry overview, organizational developments, which includes regulatory enhancements and international involvement, and the audited financial statements as at the 31st December 2019. Mr. Speaker, the Auditor General issued an unqualified opinion on the financial statements of the Cayman Islands Monetary Authority as at 31st December 2019. I will now speak about the contents of the audited financial statements, first starting with the financial performance. Sema's net income for the reporting period ending 31st December 2019 was CI 5.83 million. Net income in the 12-month period of 2018 was CI 8.358 million, of which, for the 2019 period, that is, 830,000 was allocated to Sema's capital expenditure reserve, and 5 million was allocated to the general reserve of the Cayman Islands government. Looking at the authority's balance sheet, Mr. Speaker, total assets for the year ended 31st December 2019 were CI 206.085 million, whereas total assets of the year ended for 31st December 2018 were CI 178.502 million, and the 2019 figure representing 146.82% of total demand liabilities, that is, currency in circulation at the end of 2019. Total demand liabilities for the year ended 31st December 2019 equaled CI 140.369 million. Total demand liabilities represent the face value of currency notes and coins in circulation. Total reserves were CI 33.055 million for the 12-month period ended 31st December 2019, whereas total reserves in the 12-month period for 2018 were CI 32.871 million, while contributed capital in 2019 remained at CI 2.328 million, the same as the previous 12-month financial period. Mr. Speaker, Sema collected 102.3 million in coercive fees from regulated entities on behalf of the Cayman Islands government for the reporting period ended 31st December 2019, in comparison to the 104.5 million for the period of 1st January 2018 to 31st December 2018. As at the 31st December 2019, currency in circulation, excluding the numismatic coins, stood at 127.5 million in notes and 12.9 million in coins, which totals 140.4 million. This represents a 10.9% increase from the 31 December 2018 figure of 126.6 million. I will now highlight some of the significant updates of the authority in key sections, starting with the industry overview. Mr. Speaker, now turning to an overview of the industry's performance, I'm pleased to report that the financial industry remained highly competitive in several areas during the reporting period of 1st January to 31st December 2019. Mr. Mr. Speaker, the Cayman Islands is home to 125 licensed banks, and as of September 2019, was ranked 13th internationally in terms of cross-border assets and 14th in terms of cross-border liabilities, according to international banking statistics compiled by the Bank for International Settlements. Although there has been a decline in the number of licensed banks, as such entities continue to adapt their own business models and optimize structures. The remaining active banks are associated with well-established institutions with strong balance sheets, capitalization, and sound funding access. The domestic retail banking sector has also exhibited relative stability in terms of composition and services offered. Access to correspondent banking relationships continue to be a challenge as the U.S. correspondent banks continue to de-risk. Sema remains in dialogue with other local and regional stakeholders to identify a long-term solution to this issue. Mr. Speaker, with a total of 10,857 regulated funds during that period, the jurisdiction remains the premier domicile of choice for funds. There were ebbs and flows during 2019, but the numbers were higher than expected in the last quarter of the year, resulting in an overall strong finish. Though a small decline, this is considered to be a positive indication of a rebound in the fund sector from Sema's perspective. Trust and Corporate and Company Management Services. Mr. Speaker, the Cayman Islands has been a top international location for the provision of trust services and remains with 397 companies licensed or registered to provide these services in and from within the jurisdiction. Regarding insurance, Mr. Speaker, with 764 total insurance licensees, the Cayman Islands remains the world-leading domicile for healthcare captives and the second largest for captives. Since the previous report, 41 new issuer licenses, including portfolio insurance companies, and 3 insurance intermediary licenses were added to the market. During the reporting period of 1st of January to 31st December 2019, and for the 4th consecutive year, 33 new insurance companies were added to the Cayman Islands international insurance market. While traditional captives, including healthcare captives, continue to be formed, the jurisdiction saw an increased diversity of new insurance companies in 2019. Mr. Speaker, for the period reporting, no licensing applications were approved for securities. Of the 13 applications received, 6 were refused, 1 was returned, and 4 were withdrawn. In the same period, 2 licenses were cancelled or revoked compared to 2018, in which 9 license applications were approved and 5 licenses were cancelled. Existing licenses predominantly relate to broker-dealers and or market makers who offer foreign exchange trading and over-the-counter contracts for differences to retail, institutional, and or professional clients in varied countries. At 31st December 2019, there were 38 securities investment business licensed holders. As at 31st December 2019, there were 2,198 excluded persons compared to 2,926 at the same date in 2018. This represents a 25% decrease in registrations over the past year. There were an additional 63 registered persons. Mr. Speaker, I would like now to highlight the organizational development that took place at the Authority during the 12-month financial period ended 31st December 2019, as outlined in the Authority's 2018 to 2020 strategic plan. One of the pillars of the plan is enhancing efficiency and effectiveness through structural and functional reforms. A key component of these reforms was addressing the need for the macroprudential unit through the creation of the Financial Stability and Statistics Unit, or the FSSU for short. The FSSU focuses on research in the area of financial stability and macroprudential supervision and has a cross-functional role. The FSSU also assists the Authority's supervisory divisions by providing statistical support with survey designs, forms, databases, and business intelligence tools, and through the collection and compilation of survey responses and data sets not collected by the supervisory divisions. Mr. Speaker, another crucial enhancement for the authority was the creation of the Anti-Money Laundering Division, a division dedicated to the monitoring and supervision of regulated entities to ensure compliance with AML and CFT requirements. As a result of establishing the AML division, the authority's AML-CFT efforts led to a significant increase in the number of AML-CFT on-site inspections, enhancements to the collection and analysis of data, facilitated in part by recent legislative amendments to better inform the authority's understanding of the inherent money laundering and financing of terrorism risks present in each sector, and participation in and host of various AML outreach sessions for a cross-section of regulated entities. Mr. Speaker, turning our focus to the authority's human capital development, HR efforts for 2019 included significant training activities, learning and development and recruitment. Training activities included sessions on the new risk-based methodology, administrative fines, and the AML-CFT. The process to enhance the authority's learning and development program through the recruitment of a learning and development specialist also commenced in 2019 with a successful candidate onboarded in 2020. During the year, 31 new persons were hired to join the organization, 21 of whom were Caymanians. Of the 31 recruits, 19 were for the regulatory divisions, 7 for technical support in law, compliance, policy, and statistics, and 5 for other operational areas. Total staff complement as at 31st December 2019 was 214. Mr. Speaker, other initiatives conducted in support of the authority's 2018 to 2020 strategic plan included promoting and enhancing market confidence, consumer protection, and the reputation of the islands as a financial center to satisfy statutory obligations. This involved numerous activities such as more speaking engagements locally as well as overseas, meetings with local financial industry associations, conducting counterfeit detection awareness training in partnership with the RCIPS's Financial Crime Unit, visits to other regulators, participation in various standard setting and or influential organizations, including the FSB's Regional Consultative Group for the Americas. Mr. Speaker, turning to the regulatory update, efforts continued to strengthen and enhance the regulatory framework governing the financial services industry of the Cayman Islands. In collaboration with the Cayman Islands government, other stakeholders, and competent authorities, the authority took several steps to implement continued measures and recommendations following the Caribbean Financial Action Task Force's review, which took place in December 2017. Throughout the year, the authority issued and updated 10 regulatory measures, that is, rules, statement of guidance, guidance notes, and policies and procedures covering Class C insurance companies, brokers and agencies, market conduct of trust and corporate service providers, Basel III ratio for banking licensees, Sema's expectations for succession planning, actuarial valuation reports, assessments of fitness and propriety, and criteria to approve changes in ownership, shareholdings, and control for the purposes of the relevant laws across all sectors. A new section, which is Section 14, was inserted in the guidance notes on proliferation and proliferation financing. This area includes subsections on the domestic legislation relating to proliferation financing, the difference between proliferation financing and money laundering, the challenges associated with identifying proliferation financing, and obligations of financial service providers when screening clients for proliferation financing. Mr. Speaker, furthermore, in 2019, the authority was assessed by the Group of International Finance Center supervisors against the standard on the regulation of trusts and corporate service providers. The standard set out expectations for regulators in areas such as licensing, corporate governance, conduct administration, and financial crime and international sanctions. This is the jurisdiction's first evaluation of compliance to the standard, and the assessor's report was subsequently received in August of this year, 2020. Mr. Speaker, I wish to now speak to the authority's involvement on an international front. During the year, the Cayman Islands Monetary Authority continued to benefit from having a seat on multiple overseas international and regional working groups and bodies, including the Caribbean Group of Banking Supervisors, the International Association of Insurance Supervisors, the Financial Stability Board, the International Organization of Securities Commissions, and the Group of International Financial Center Supervisors. During the events, panel discussions, plenary meetings, and workshops, a variety of topics such as emerging market trends, key regulatory focused areas, potential risks and challenges, including other global issues, were covered. The authority is also actively involved with the work of the Caribbean Financial Action Task Force. Several senior staff members participated in various overseas meetings and training sessions in an effort to address the concerns reflected in the CFATF assessment report and demonstrate the jurisdiction's effectiveness in its implementation of the recommendations highlighted within the report. Mr. Speaker, lastly to mention, the authority also represents the jurisdiction on a number of other organizations, such as the International Association of Securities Commissions, the International Association of Insurance Supervisors, the Caribbean Association of Insurance Regulators, the Caribbean Group of Banking Supervisors, the Association of Supervisors of Banks of Americas, the Global Forum on Tax Transparency and Exchange of Information, Steering Committee, and the Peer Review Committee, the Group of International Insurance Center Supervisors, the Caribbean Group of Securities Regulators, and the Offshore Group of Collective Investment Schemes Supervisors. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, I have attempted to provide a summary of Sema's annual report, to highlight several key areas of development. Sema plays a critical role in our financial services industry and has proven its commitment to playing its part in contributing to the continued success of the jurisdiction. The government remains confident in the strength of Sema, especially in its ability to operate successfully in this dynamic, competitive global environment of the financial services industry. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Freedom of Information 2019 Annual Strategic Report, to be laid on the table by the Honourable Minister of Financial Services and Home Affairs, Chairman of the Ombudsman Oversight Committee.
Minister of Financial Services.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to lay on the table of this Honourable House the Freedom of Information 2019 Annual Statistics Report.
So ordered. The member speaking, Minister speaking to?
No, Mr. Speaker.
Mental Health Commission, Cayman Islands, the Mental Health Commission Annual Report for 2015. The Mental Health Commission Annual Report 2017. The Mental Health Commission Annual Report 2018. Mental Health Commission Annual Report 2019, to be laid on the table by the Honourable Minister of Health, Environment, Culture and Housing.
Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay on the table of this Honourable House the annual report for the Mental Health Commission for 2015, the Mental Health Commission Annual Report for 2017, the Mental Health Commission Annual Report for 2018, and the Mental Health Commission Annual Report for 2019.
So ordered. Is the Honorable Minister speaking there too?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in accordance with Section 8A of the Mental Health Commission Law 2013, I'm pleased today to table in this Honorable House the annual report of the Mental Health Commission for the calendar year 2019. Thereto I speak. Mr. Speaker, the Mental Health Commission was established in January 2014 under the Mental Health Commission Law 2013. The members of the Mental Health Commission who served in 2019 are as follows: Dr. Mark Lockhart, Chairman; Klein Glidden Jr., Deputy Chair; Honorable Alex Henderson, QC, Deputy Chair; Sutton Burke, Member; Nurse Dipna Carton, Member; Fiona McDougall, Member; Cheryl Miles, Member; Jackie Neal, Member; Dr. Inoka Rickens, Member; Janet Flynn, Secretary and the Ministry's Liaison. The members of the Mental Health Commission are stakeholders from various sectors representing legal, healthcare practitioners with training in mental health, and advocates or lay persons. Mr. Speaker, the functions of the Mental Health Commission are divided into three sections: quasi-judicial, to hear and determine appeals under various sections of the law and conduct reviews where a patient has been detained and released under an emergency detention order 3 or more times in 30 days. Recommendations to the Health Practice Commission councils. This includes submitting an annual report to the Minister with responsibility for health, reviewing and advising on scopes of practice and codes of ethics for practitioners, providing policy advice to the relevant registering councils, and advising the Health Practice Commission regarding mental health facilities, medical research, and clinical trials in mental health. General functions include the following: obtain and compile statistics on mental health, oversee and deliver mental health training for constables, prison officers, and any other persons expected to deal with mental health patients in the performance of their functions, approve a list of overseas mental health facilities, research and establish protocols and guidelines for mental health advocacy, and approve persons to act as advocates, establish and maintain a program which provides information to the general public concerning mental illness and co-occurring disorders and related conditions, review the progress of patients transferred overseas, review every 6 months the progress of remand prisoners deemed unfit to plead and submit it to the Chief Officer, Judicial Administration, and give policy advice to the Minister responsible on any aspect of the local mental health system. Mr. Speaker, I will now speak to the contents of the report. The overview of the mental health system. Mental health services are delivered through the Health Services Authority. Local private facilities and mental health care facilities located overseas. The Psychiatry and Behavioral Unit, formerly Mental Health Unit at the Health Services Authority, is an 8-bed inpatient unit that was designed as an adult facility for acute care of patients suffering from serious mental illness. The Caribbean Haven, a government facility, provides treatment for patients suffering from alcohol and substance abuse. Her Majesty's Cayman Islands Prison Service also accommodates persons suffering from a mental illness. Mr. Speaker, although not ideal, there are mental health patients who have committed crimes and will require housing and prison facility. There is no inpatient facility for children and adolescents, but if necessary, they are admitted to the psychiatry and behavioral health unit where they are treated. Mr. Speaker, as stated in a previous report of the Mental Health Commission, there is an adequate number of mental health practitioners, psychiatrists, psychologists, mental health nurses, counselors, therapists, employed in the public and private sectors. Although the distribution of human service resources among the 3 islands is disproportionate, in addition to the 2 community psychiatric nurses on Grand Cayman, there is a full-time community psychiatric nurse for the sister islands employed by the HSA and based at the Faith Hospital. Mr. Speaker, we are committed to improving our outpatient services so that the care that is needed accessible in a timely manner to all. Mr. Speaker, as you may be aware, in July 2017, the Ministry of Health, on behalf of the Cayman Islands government, signed a contract with the Montgomery System Architects Incorporated, a Toronto-based company, to conduct design and construction cost consultancy services for the building of a long-term residential mental health facility. Mr. Speaker, I am pleased to inform you here today that in October 2019, the Cayman Islands government broke ground on the construction of the long-term residential mental health facility, which is expected to be completed in the 3rd quarter of 2021. The facility will serve residents who have a chronic mental illness to be cared for holistically in a safe and secure environment using a therapeutic approach with the prime objective to integrate them back into community where possible. Mr. Speaker, this facility is not for acute care of the mentally ill. Mr. Speaker, members of this Honorable House should take note that while the facility will require ongoing financing from the government, it will be a part of a continuum of mental health care services available to residents, thereby reducing some of the burden on the inpatient unit at the hospital designed for acute care. In addition, Mr. Speaker, you may recall that one of the key objectives of the facility is to repatriate our Caymanian mental health patients currently at overseas facilities, many of whom are incurring costs to the Cayman Islands government while being separated from their family and friends. Mr. Speaker, we also want to make sure that our patients sent overseas receive the care required so that they can be successfully integrated back in society and become productive citizens. This may not happen for every patient, but we know there are some who will respond provided the right environment and programs are in place. Mr. Speaker, training on the mental health legislation and increasing mental health awareness amongst our community continue to be a focus of the Commission. Last year, the Mental Health Commission conducted 2 sessions to members of the RCIP cohort of new recruits. Approximately 50 new recruits received training in the mental health legislation and crisis intervention management techniques. Mr. Speaker, the training conducted by the Commission provides a platform for feedback and dialogue on how to address stigma, public education, de-escalation, and identifying some of the challenges and possible solutions surrounding mental health. Mr. Speaker, is a requirement under the Mental Health Law 2013 for all detention forms to be sent to the Secretary of the Mental Health Commission for storage and filing. Mr. Speaker, for the year 2019, there were 57 patients admitted for various types and degrees of mental illness, an increase of 2 from 2018. The number of detention forms received was 118, an increase of 5 over the previous year. Mr. Speaker, for the same period last year, the greatest percentage increase in the forms received was the request for an emergency detention order by a constable, up from 4 in 2018 to 12 in 2019. This form is completed by members of the RCIP who takes a person into protective custody to the Accident and Emergency Unit, the Cayman Islands Hospital, where they are assessed. If they require hospitalization, an emergency detention order lasting up to 72 hours is issued. With the increased use of requests of an emergency detention order form by a constable, it is fair to say that the RCIPS is becoming more aware of their role under the mental health legislation and by extension in the community. Until the long-term residential mental health facility is completed, the unit at the Health Services Authority, which is meant for acute mentally ill persons, continue to be occupied by the chronically mentally ill patients. Mr. Speaker, I can only say that based on the utilization of detention forms, this suggests that there is an increased awareness and understanding of the mental health legislation by the general public, families, healthcare practitioners, and those persons who have powers under the law. However, I can't stress enough the importance of the building of the long-term residential mental health facility, where the chronically mentally ill patients are more likely to benefit rather than them having them in a unit at the hospital, which is meant for the acutely ill. During this period, 2019, one request for an appeal was received by the Commission. Mr. Speaker, not to be left out in the annual observation of World Mental Health Day, designated for the 10th of October each year, the theme for 2019 was mental health promotion and suicide prevention. A number of activities were organized by the staff of the Psychiatry and Behavioral Unit, and the HSA is in collaboration with the Mental Health Commission, including a symposium to discuss mental health implications of domestic violence. The event took place at the Harkwell Theatre, and the play Downside Up, written by Dr. Frank McField, was presented, followed by a panel discussion with mental health professionals and community stakeholders. Mr. Speaker, as required under the law, under the Mental Health Commission law, one of the functions of the Commission is to obtain and compile statistics on mental illness in order to report on the needs of the island's mental health system. Mr. Speaker, for the year 2019, 8 facilities submitted data collection forms. The highlights are as follows. 90% of 8 facilities that responded received health insurance for mental illness. However, what is unknown is whether the coverage is adequate for the treatment provided. A large percentage of clients are between 25 years old and 64 years old. More females than males are clients. Most of the clients reside in the districts of Georgetown and West Bay. The average number of visits encountered per quarter for outpatient services was 8,786. The average number of patients admitted with a primary or secondary diagnosis of mental health on a quarterly basis is 110, with more females than males being admitted. The average length of hospital stay was 10 days. The counselor or therapist category makes up a large number of mental health employees employed by the facility. The top 3 diagnoses were grouped under other, anxiety and depression, where other includes attention deficit hyperactive disorder or autism. Mr. Speaker, going forward, the information will be collected quarterly and the findings reported to the Cayman Islands House of Parliament annually. Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to report that the Commission collaborated with various agencies during 2019 to share information. raise awareness, and to educate the community. Members met with the following persons and agencies: the Superintendent of Health Insurance, the Alex Panton Foundation, Children and Youth Services, the coaching industry, Cayman Islands Law Reform Commission, Loud Silent Voices, the Commissioner of Police, the FCO Project on Mental Health Services in the prisons, participant in the PAHO's regional roster for mental health in disasters. Mr. Speaker, these meetings in partnership help to advance the work of the Commission and provide assistance for the unit at the HSA through a common understanding between stakeholders and the public. Mr. Speaker, as you can imagine, with once monthly meeting of the Commission, it has been a really busy year for the members who are all employed full-time in both public and private sectors. This year represents the 6th year since the establishment of the Commission. Mr. Speaker, as I stated before, members of the Commission give of their time freely, and I so would like to take this opportunity to thank them for their time, effort, and passion for the work that they do. Mr. Speaker, in order to mitigate many of the problems in our society that we currently face, I believe we must facilitate early recognition and treatment of common mental illnesses by enhancing access to mental health care through an integrated approach. The Commission will continue to educate, inform, and empower those individuals who require assistance. Mr. Speaker, I am proud to say that we have a Mental Health Commission that is committed and has been working diligently since its formation, and the Commission continues to advocate and promote mental health well-being for all the community. Mr. Speaker, in closing, I would like to thank the ministry staff, again the members of the Mental Health Commission, for their hard work, dedication, and commitment to a subject that affects all of us. It is the vision of the Cayman Islands government for optimal mental well-being for all. I thank you, Mr. Speaker. God bless.
Office of the Director of Public Prosecution, Cayman Islands, Annual Report 2019, to be laid on the table by the Honorable Attorney General.
The Honorable Attorney General.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg leave of this House to lay on the table the report of the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions for the year 2019.
So ordered. Is the AG speaking there too?
Mr. Speaker, no, thank you. The report itself is quite comprehensive and self-explanatory, and I would commend it to honorable members of this House and the general public. Thank you.
Freedom of Information Law 2020 revision, Freedom of Information General Amendment Regulations 2020, to be laid on the table by the Honorable Attorney General.
Honorable Attorney General.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I seek a leave of this House to lay on the table the Freedom of Information General Amendment to Regulations 2020.
So ordered. Is the Honorable AG
Mr. Speaker, there is an accompanying motion that goes along with those regulations, and at that stage I will speak to the content of the regulations.
Immigration, Transition, Grant of the Right to be Caymanian Order 2020. Immigration, Transition, Grant of the Right to be Caymanian Number 2 Order 2020. Immigration, Transition, Grant of the Right to be Caymanian Number 3 Order 2020. Immigration, Transition, Grant of the Right to be Caymanian Number 4 Order 2020, to be laid on the table by the Honorable Minister of Employment, Border Control, Community Affairs, International Trade, Investment, Aviation, and Maritime Affairs.
The Honorable the Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay on the table of this Honorable House 4 orders. The Immigration Transition Grant of the Right to be Caymanian, Order 2020. These are orders made by the Cabinet. Mr. Speaker, this order confers on Mr. Kirk Anthony Reed Wilson the right to be Caymanian.
Laying them separately or together?
Separately. Given the importance of these matters, I think it's better that I take them individually.
So ordered.
Mr. Speaker, I also beg to lay on the table of this Honourable House the Immigration Grant of the Right to be Caymanian Number 2, Order 2020, which confers on Miss Kalicia Carleen Barborum the right to be Caymanian.
So ordered.
Mr. Speaker, I also beg to lay on the table of this Honourable House the Immigration Transition Grant of the Right to be Caymanian Number 3, Order 2020, which confers on Mr. Glenville Alonzo Lewis the right to be Caymanian.
So ordered.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay on the table of this Honourable House the Immigration Transition Grant of the Right to be Caymanian Number 4, Order 2020, which confers on Mr. Andre Alpha Mondesir the right to be Caymanian.
So ordered. Is the Premier speaking at this time?
Mr. Speaker, the procedure requires that those orders be laid on the table of this Honourable House. They are government motions which will seek a resolution of this House essentially ratifying those decisions of the Cabinet in accordance with the relevant provision in the Immigration Transition Law.
Thank you.
And, Mr. Speaker, when I come to move those motions, I will then speak at some length to each of the orders.
Thank you. Suspension.
Yeah, let me read the item first. Questions to honorable ministers and members of the Cabinet.
Honorable Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the suspension of Standing Order 23, 7, and 8 in order that questions may be asked of ministers after the hour of 11 o'clock.
Question is that Standing Orders 7 and 8 be 23, 7, and 8 be suspended. Take questions after the hour of 11 a.m. All in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. Standing orders are suspended.
The elected member from Newlands to ask the Honourable Minister of Commerce, Planning and Infrastructure. Question number 1.
The Honourable Deputy Leader of the Opposition, member for Newlands. Question number 1.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to ask following question to the Honourable Minister of Commerce, Planning and Infrastructure, which reads as follows. Can the Honourable Minister indicate if the Cayman Islands are on target to meet the 70% renewable energy in our energy mix by 2037 as stated in the National Energy Policy?
Honourable the Minister of Commerce.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, thank the member for the question. Speaker to answer. A consultation document was issued by the Utility Regulations and Competition Office, OFREG, for a Renewable Energy Auction Scheme, REAS. OFREG plans to launch a scheme in 2021-2022, which will follow the Integrated Resource Plan roadmap for adding renewables to the grid. OFREG has also approved a battery energy storage system for CUC, which will allow approximately 12 megawatts of capacity to be added as distributed energy resources. In other words, it would provide more capacity to extend the core and the DER programs. This will bring the total renewable energy capacity to 29 megawatts and close to the 2025 projections for that energy resource. Mr. Speaker, in addition to this, an application for a utility-scale solar farm was recently submitted to OFREG for consideration, and barring any unforeseen circumstances, OFREG expect to be at approximately 25 to 30% renewable energy by 2027 and remain on track to achieve the 70% target by 2037.
The Honorable the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I wonder if the Minister can tell us if this battery storage of 12 megawatts of capacity is, and in addition, the total renewable energy capacity 25 megawatts. Is it installed or net capacity?
Honorable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I unfortunately do not have that information, but I will get it for the member.
The Honorable the Leader of the Opposition. Supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I wonder if the Minister can tell us that 70% target for 2037, which I've always had my concerns about, is that installed or net capacity?
Honorable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I can confirm that in just a few minutes if the member will allow me some time. Mr. Speaker, I'm just awaiting the response on the battery, but I am being reliably informed that the 70% required under the National Energy Policy will be on the net, not the capacity.
The Honourable the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, having heard that response to that supplementary, I wonder if the Minister can tell us if that is based on projected demand and installed capacity by the year 2037.
Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, it will take me, I don't know if the member wants me to get these answers and provide him with detailed answers later on or in writing, but it'll take me a few minutes to get this information.
Mr. Speaker,
Leader of the Opposition.
thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would prefer that it be elucidated here on the floor, because there's more than I who are interested in these things, because there are a number of questions that this substantive answer raises now, and such as the 12 megawatt, will it be a reduction on installed capacity of fossil fuel generation? Those are all questions that are absolutely relevant, that needs to be answered in this country. We can't have the fluff language and there's no explanation, because the energy policy, when I read it, I was just as confused as a black man in a Ku Klux Klan rally. So, you know, there needs to be some answers.
Mr. Speaker.
The Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm not sure, but perhaps, I don't know if we're minded for the lunch break, and then I can have the team here to answer the questions after the lunch break, or we can defer it to then.
Mr. Speaker, I'm comfortable with that.
As long as it's worked out between both of you. I said as long as it's worked out between both of you, then we'll take the balance of the answer after lunch. That's what you're agreeing on? That's what I thought. That's what you were saying.
Mr. Speaker, whatever you decide, sir, I shall bow to your
to keep it
rule.
flowing, we'll take the luncheon break at this time. So 2:15. We will suspend until 2:15.